The first thing I want you to know, I am hard of hearing. I have several frequency ranges that I struggle with. Most of my hearing loss comes from too many years in Minuteman silos, and then being way too close to too many explosions one the year I spent in Iraq. Therefore, I'm going to ask that you please hold your questions to the end of my lesson. Elijah has volunteered at that time to bring the microphone around to you in hopes that I'll be able to understand what you're saying. And if you are wondering, yes, I do have hearing aids, but I don't wear them. They make the ringing in my ears about 10 times worse. The second thing that you may not know about me, I am a nerd. And you may ask, how much of a nerd are you? I built an observatory on top of my garage to house my telescope. When my wife and I go on vacations, I always try to work in a side trip to a planetarium or to an observatory. For leisure reading, I read 2 to 3 peer-reviewed academic articles a week. My favorite topics are astronomy, physics, and medical science. I can keep going on, but I think you see the pattern. Tonight, my title slide, we're going to be covering science and creation. Now, this is a lot of material to cover in 1 week, and so you guys are stuck with me for the next 2 weeks. Tonight, we're going to try to get through the topic of science. But before I begin, I want to clarify, I am not trying to change or upset anybody's paradigm or become a stumbling block to your faith. My goal in teaching these lessons is to increase your knowledge and to widen your perspective on these subjects. Tonight's lesson is not going to be your typical Wednesday night Bible class lesson, but I'm going to ask for your patience and ask you to stick with me as I need to lay a foundation. So with that said, let's begin. In 2011, I had the opportunity to go to Antarctica and work. I was there for McMurdo Station for 16 weeks, and I actually got to go to South Pole Station for 1 week. As a nerd, this experience was like heaven on earth to me. I got to meet people from all around the world. I got to experience different cultures. I got to interact directly with with several scientists and ask them all types of crazy questions about the experiments that they were doing in Antarctica. And as you might also see up there, I became a world-class snow shoveler like a lot of people else on station, okay? Just a little side note. Shortly after getting to Antarctica, I quickly realized that the majority of the people that I was there working with were either atheists or agnostic. I had some of the most fascinating conversations about science and the Bible while I was there. For me, it was surprising to see how much Bible some of the atheists actually knew. And I think it was surprising for the atheists to find out how much science I actually knew. I also learned that science is a god for a significant number of those individuals. So let's define a few things as we get started here. Science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experimentation. It is both a body of knowledge and the process of building that knowledge into create testable explanations and accurate predictions about the universe and the world that we live in. Science can be divided into several branches. We have the physical sciences, which study the inorganic. These are the fields of astronomy, physics, chemistry, earth science. The biological sciences, such as biology and medicine, study the organic world and its life and the world of life and its processes. The social sciences study the social and cultural aspects of human behavior. They include anthropology and economics, along with a few other disciplines. Scientific knowledge constantly changes. So what do I mean by that? Rather than an absolute set of rigid facts, science is supposed to be an evolving process. As new evidence, perspectives, and technology emerge, older theories are refined, expanded, sometimes overturned to provide a more accurate explanation of the world around us. Now, at this point, I'm going to go down a couple of rabbit holes throughout my presentation. And it may seem that I am getting off topic, but please stick with me. There is a mean to my madness, okay? Show of hands. How many of you have seen the movie Men in Black? Yeah, quite a few of us. Hard to believe it's been almost 29 years since that movie came out. And this was a funny movie, and where all of a sudden we discover that there's extraterrestrials living in New York City. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones played the actors in this, and it was a fun movie. But it had a quote that I really like, and it was this, that shortly after Will Smith got exposed and realized that there were extraterrestrials, he was overwhelmed. And Agent K said this to him: 1,000 years ago, everybody knew the earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that humans were completely alone on it. Imagine what you will know tomorrow. And that last phrase, imagine what you will know tomorrow, is what I want you to key in on. And keep that in your mind, because that's kind of the underlying theme that I'm going to have as we go through this tonight. Everybody recognize this? This is the geocentric model of the universe. And I know some of you go, well, everybody, a few of you may even laugh. It's kind of silly. We know so much better than that now. But for 1,800 years, this is what I would have taught you as an educator. But like every model that we come up with, there were problems with it. The very first problems were the retrograde motion of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And so what did we do? Like all good scientists, we tweaked it. We made little adjustments to it to make the model work, rather than asking, is that the right model? But for 1,800 years, that's what was taught. And then, in about 1543, Nicola Copernicus published this model, putting the sun near the center of the universe. And the thing I want you to take note of on the screen here, from publication until about 1700, very few astronomers were convinced of this system. Academia is usually the last people to come on board when there's something new that is proposed. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I've got a short little graphic, hopefully it plays, kind of show you a few things here. Copernicus' model of putting the sun at the center, we now know is not quite right. It's not the center of the universe. And as you kind of watch this graphic here, this is the heliocentric model of the planets circling the sun. But again, it's not right. The sun is actually moving through the solar system, or through the Milky Way, at 70,000 kilometers per hour. So if you could, imagine this. If we could step just outside and look at the solar system from down on, this is kind of what we would be seeing. You'd see this corkscrew, this helical motion of the planets as they're being pulled by the sun, just like as if the sun was a comet traveling through. And that's actually a pretty good representation of what we see. In addition to that, the other thing is the Milky Way is in motion. And we're moving towards the Andromeda Galaxy. So you've got motion upon motion upon motion upon motion. Okay? Step back here just for a moment. Anybody recognize Lord Kelvin? Yeah. Thank you. For those who don't know, Lord Kelvin in the 1800s, he's the guy that came up with the Kelvin temperature scale. So if your mind's trying to go back to chemistry or earth science, the Kelvin scale has no negatives. 0 degrees Kelvin is where all molecular motion stops. He's the guy that came up with this in the 1800s. In 1900, he got up and addressed the British Association for the Advancement of Science. You want to talk about a collection of nerds. Huge room full of scientists. He gets up and he says, there's nothing new to be discovered in physics. We know it all. We've learned everything there is. Only thing that remains is more and more precise measurements. But a few years later, we unlocked the power of the atom. We discovered DNA, quantum mechanics. And for a lot of us, we really come to realize that E equals mc squared, energy is actually milk times coffee squared. Okay, just to give you that boost, especially if you're an educator. One of the things that I want you to, as we go through this, I want you to realize every time we have an advancement in technology, we rewrite all our science books. The discovery of the telescope opened up a whole new world. The microscope, aerodynamics. It just keeps going. Every time we have this leap, we go, oh, that's how that worked. Today, technology is expanding at an exponential rate. What do I mean by that? It means that it is continually accelerating. Recent breakthroughs in just this last decade have been defined by an explosion in generative AI. We've seen tremendous improvements in medical imaging, commercial reusable space rockets, electric vehicles, direct-to-device satellite communications, and we're on the verge of quantum computing. So I would like you to take a look. This is a condensed graph, and this shows the rate of acceleration here. And one of the things that I want you to take note of, my grandparents were born in the early 1900s. They had more in common with the people of the previous 500 years than they had with the people of this last 100 years. Think about that. We kind of have that perspective, we lose that. If you look on this graph, and if you can see it, man on the moon, just the inventions and technology improvements that have happened since then kind of boggles the mind. And I want to talk a little bit about that. These are some of the technological improvements that we have seen in the last 100 years. Look at just automotive engineering. Look at where we've come in 100 years. Aeronautical engineering. Incredible advances. I had a friend, just to kind of keep things in perspective here. He's at 40,000 feet flying in a hollow metal tube at 600 miles an hour, and he's complaining that the Wi-Fi keeps blinking out. I think that went through. Okay? So there's incredible advances in technology. Some of them are really good, and as a nerd, I'm also a geek, I try to pay attention and follow this. One of the problems that we have, though, with the technology at the rate it is advancing, a lot of us can operate the technology. Very few of us understand how it works or how to repair it. Medical imaging and medical technology. The last 60 years have been enormous. Enormous. Several of my grandparents and a lot of my aunts and uncles died in their late 50s and early 60s. The things that have come along today, I mean, we know people that have had heart attacks, and 2 days later, they're back home as if nothing had happened. That leap in technology is amazing. We've improved quality of life. We've extended life. Right now, we have, according to the Census Bureau, we have over 100,000 people just in the United States that are over 100 years old. Japan is more than double that. This is all because of advances in medical technology. And I'm incredibly thankful for this. I have a son who's still alive because of advances in medical technology. Think about this, agriculture. We have, in the last 100 years, the advances that we have seen have allowed us to be able to feed millions of people. One of the sad parts about this is a lot of our current generation are so separated from this, they don't know where their food comes from. But for most of our history, we've been an agrarian type society until recently. Physics and mathematics. This is where I really like to hone in on. We've had some dramatic changes in the last 100 years. We've went from basically a descriptive mechanics to abstract and formal logic, okay? We're starting to shift back, and if we got time at the end of this, I will be glad to go into this. There's some pluses and minuses, and again, I don't want to get too nerdy and too deep into this, but just to let you know that we've had some incredible changes. So, with this said, there's some problems currently, okay, as our technology and with science. So one of the things that I want you to know is that today, science is deeply influenced by politics and grant funding. While the scientific method itself aims to be objective, how studies are designed, how their findings are implemented, is inherently shaped by political priorities, legislation, and grant funding. Congress and the president control the purse strings. Elected officials mandate, restrict, and entirely freeze funding for specific fields of study based on political ideology. The mechanisms for awarding grants is also subject to administrative changes. For example, federal grant guidelines face intense debate over should funding prioritize a particular political or ideological objective over standard merit base. So we have issues. I like this quote here from Albert Einstein. Again, his foresight was amazing. Politics is far more complicated than physics, and it really is. When science and ideologies and politics get involved with science, some of the things that happen, scientists will sometimes bypass the traditional scientific method. They often rely on computer simulations, deductive and abductive reasoning, basically trying to get a particular outcome. This typically occurs when variables cannot be directly manipulated or when researchers are exploring complex or theoretical concepts. How many of you guys recognize this? Show of hands. Yeah, a few of you. What is that? That's the first image of a black hole ever taken. Okay? The image was actually released in 2019, and the world went, yay! Okay, just for a little side note, just in case you're nerd, it's 53.5 million light years away. Now, there's a problem here. That's the actual raw data image. They exceeded the diffraction resolution, limiting resolution, by over 1,250 times. There was a retraction submitted in a paper, buried deep, but the rest of the world thinks, oh, we've imaged a black hole. Some of the problems that can occur when politics happen. Okay, I'm going to go down another little rabbit hole here. How many of you guys, earth science, chemistry, physics, recognize the four fundamental forces? This is what you were taught? Yeah, a couple of us. Hopefully somebody on the back row there says too, yeah. Okay. So gravity, electromagnetism, the weak interaction nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force. These are the forces that govern all the interactions in the universe. They dictate everything from the immense scale of galaxies to the internal structure of an atom. But did you know we actually made up the strong nuclear force? You don't hear about that in the classroom. We actually did. We couldn't get the model to work. And so in 1935, this Japanese physicist, who I'm not going to embarrass myself, proposed a theory to explain what holds the atomic nuclei together despite an electromagnetic repulsion pushing those positive charged protons apart. So in case I'm getting too nerdy, I'm sorry. This is the current model that we've been dealing with the atom for about 100 years. And it has protons and neutrons in the middle. And the big thing with the strong nuclear force is if you have two magnets, remember if you have like poles, they repel each other? Well, how do I have all these protons together at the center of this without them blowing apart? Well, we made up this strong nuclear force to overcome that. Imagine what your children might know tomorrow when you find out there's no such thing as a neutron. These guys here are doing some fascinating work. I think these guys are onto something. And it may be that in a few years, that's the new model that we look at as far as the atom. It's really kind of cool. If you want to see it, great book. All right, back on topic. At most colleges and universities today, belief in God is not part of the scientific curriculum. Mainstream scientific community relies on naturalism, which limits scientific inquiry to the observable, natural mechanisms. Introducing any biblical explanations is typically seen as stopping or halting the scientific process. I can show you a number of college professors that have lost jobs, lost tenureship at universities because of a belief in God. Back in the 2010s through 2020, there was a purging of anybody that had a belief in God. You didn't have any business being in our department. And typically in colleges, if you have tenureship, you're secure. Your ability to pursue things, these guys were let go because of the belief in God. We need to get back to some of our roots. Many of the great scientists of the past who founded and developed key disciplines in science were creationists. They believed in God. As I scroll through this list, hopefully you're going to recognize some of these names. These are the founders of all these sciences. These are the guys who broke the groundwork. They believed in God. And I'd like to, just for your benefit, I'd like you to look at some of their thoughts, some of their quotes, to get into their mind, their mindset. Kepler, the chief aim, investigation of the external world should be the discovery of the rational order and harmony which has been imposed on it by God. That was his attitude as he went through and discovered things. Newton, did you know he had a whole list of theological writings? He considered them more important than his scientific work. He said, there is a being who made all things, who holds all things in his power, and therefore is to be feared. This is the guy who developed and invented calculus, classical mechanics, which I still teach. Brilliant man, but yet he considered his theological work much more important. Compton, science is a glimpse of God's purpose in nature. The very existence of the amazing world of the atom and radiation points to a purposeful creation, to the ideas that there is a God and an intelligent purpose backed by everything. An orderly universe testifies to the greatest statement ever uttered. In the beginning, God. The Bible is a theological text rather than a scientific textbook. Next week, I'm going to dive much deeper into that. But just kind of keep that in your mind. We look at things in the 21st century from an American standpoint. We're 2,000 years and half a world away separated. Our perspective is not how a lot of the Bible was written. And you need to keep that in your mind. But with that said, there are some amazing verses that we're going to look at here in a few minutes. Modern science, these discoveries predated formal scientific understanding by hundreds and centuries and even eons. These include concepts in astronomy, physics, hydrology, engineering, and medicine. Let's look at astronomy. Of course I would choose this, right? Earth's shape. Centuries before the general consensus accepted a spherical Earth, Isaiah 40:22 noted God sits above the circle of the earth. Okay? Again, gravity. Job 26:7 states that the earth hangs upon nothing, defying ancient mythology. Remember, we used to think that it was a flat disc carried by elephants or turtles. That was the common thing for 1,000 years. Okay? But it accurately describes the earth being suspended in space by gravity. This is one of my favorites. Innumerable stars, Jeremiah 33:22. The stars in the sky cannot be numbered. For thousands of years, scientists estimated the visible stars at just over 6,000. That's what we could see. And then telescopes come along and we realize there are billions of stars. Now I'm going to go down another rabbit hole here, so if you guys will, stick with me. This little region, this upper corner up here, this kind of black void, there's a spot in the northern sky. We have never, with our telescopes, we've never observed a single star there. It's always been a void. Even with our most modern telescopes in Hawaii, Kitt Peak, Palomar, we have never once detected a star there. Never. So when we launched the Hubble Space Telescope back in the 1990s, one of the goals was to look there. Now on Earth, a telescope can only look at an object for about 10, sometimes 11 hours, just because of the rotation of the Earth. The Hubble Space Telescope, because it's sitting above it, it pointed at that region for 10 straight days. And when the image came through in the control room, this is what they saw. And they were blown away. Every single dot up there, ladies and gentlemen, is a galaxy. It's not a star, it's a galaxy. And everybody there in that control room was humbled because they realized there is so much more than what we could currently see. And to think about this, God spoke all of this into creation. Let there be light. In 2022, we put the James Webb Telescope into space. The James Webb is about 6 times larger than the Hubble Telescope. And so we're seeing so many things that we couldn't see before. And we're having a major crisis in cosmology, because with every image it takes, all the models they have on the universe and the foundation are falling apart because we are seeing so much more. We're to the point where cosmologists are going, well, the universe has to be at least twice as old as we thought it was, because we can't explain how these galaxies are fully formed. So again, think about this. God spoke this into creation. Okay, I'm sorry, rabbit hole out. Back on topic here. Look at physics. Conservation of matter and energy. Genesis 2, verses 1 and 2 describes creation as finished, a concept that parallels the first law of thermodynamics, which states that the total energy in a matter in the universe remains constant and cannot be created or destroyed. Particle physics. Hebrews 11:13 notes that the visible universe was not made of things which are visible. This is often interpreted as an early intuition that matter is composed of invisible atomic particles. The properties of light. Job 38:19 asked about the dwelling place of light. I'm going to go down another rabbit hole really quick here, guys. We have built lasers, we have built fiber optics, and we've got quantum computers, and yet we really don't know what light is. Most physics courses will quietly ignore this. Light behaves as both a wave and a particle, but not simultaneously, and not by our choosing. Every time we observe it, It seems to pick a side. Just boom. There's also this problem about momentum with light. Momentum, in case you don't remember, momentum equals mass times velocity. But a photon has no mass. But yet, it can push a solar cell. Consider the speed of light. Special relativity treats the speed of light as a fundamental constant of the universe. But it didn't derive it. It just tells us that the universe chose this particular speed of light and not some other. So again, these are things that when you go through physics, they'll just ignore that because we don't have a good answer for it. So I'm sorry, back on topic. Hydrology and earth science. The water cycle. The Bible accurately describes the continuous loop of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Job 36, 27, and 28, and Ecclesiastes 1 through 7 outline water being drawn up into the clouds and returning to the earth. Ocean currents. In 1853, the father of modern oceanographic and naval meteorology used Psalms 8:8 for inspiration to map the ocean currents and wind currents of the world. These are the great streams and the rivers in the oceans. God told us about it. We just didn't recognize it. Engineering. Genesis 6, God gave Noah the dimensions of a 1.5 million cubic foot ark he was to build. In 1609, at Hoorn in Holland, a ship was built after the same pattern, that ratio of 30 to 5 to 3, revolutionizing shipbuilding. By 1900, every large ship on the high seas was inclined toward the port portions of the ark. Why was that? Let's take a quick look into this. The optimal ratio. At 6 to 1, the proportions are highly regarded by maritime design as comparable to the portions of modern cargo ships. This low center of gravity it's the fundamental part of it. The vessel's width is much greater than its height. This creates a low profile and keeps the center of gravity well below the waterline, ensuring a strong uprighting movement. It's tolerant to waves, and I'm talking massive waves. In laboratories where they've tested this design can withstand 80 to 100-foot waves and stay upright. Wonder how God knew that. Does anybody recognize what that image is? Hands? Maybe, possibly. Okay, again, a nerd here. This is a torus. A torus is a donut-shaped geometric form representing a continuous self-containing loop of fluid and energy flow. In nature, it is commonly seen in planetary and stellar magnetic fields. Fluid vortexes like smoke rings and hurricanes, biological structures such as the electromagnetic field in the human heart, and the shape of a red blood cell. We see this everywhere. And I'm going to just step out here just in case I've got a couple of math nerds here. These are the equations for a torus. And these are eloquence to this that I really, really appreciate. So again, I'm sorry. Again, you've got a nerd up here speaking, so please keep that in mind. But the torus pattern, we see this throughout nature. In so many different ways, it's predominant in everything that we see, okay? It's kind of like an underlying fundamental shape. And this is not only on a small side, but on a universal scale. Galaxies appear to follow a toral pattern in space. These are some of the recent images from James Webb Telescope confirm this dynamic structure of this torus dictating the shapes of galaxies and the universe. Did you know that the first verse of Genesis forms a torus? Anybody? In 1997, researcher Stan Tenen showed by arranging the 28 Hebrew letters of Genesis 1:1 on a three-dimensional spiral, they mapped the letters into a geometric surface that resembles a continuous donut or torus when using base 3 mathematics. So keep in mind for those, this is base 10, okay? Binary, 0 and 1, this is base 3, okay? So using that, it formed a torus. Well, how is that possible? Hebrew isn't letter. I mean, how do you get that out of the text of a Hebrew? Well, what you may not know, some of you may not know, is Hebrew is actually an alphanumerical language. Every single character in Hebrew has a distinct number value associated with it. And because of that, I can look at the sentence structure and I can do some mathematics with it because of this. I wonder what other verses that are in the Bible that might represent scientific theories that we haven't recognized yet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to questions, and I'll try my best to answer anything that you have. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Well, there's also something there about biological concepts as well. There are also some verses in the Bible of biological concepts as well.
Oh, yes.
They have several of them right off the top of the head that they said, you don't eat animals with cloven hooves because they were the ones that had most diseases that are transmissible to humans.
Mm-hmm.
And they also said there's one verse too, I have to look them up, I don't remember them right away, but they also stated that blood is the center of life of the human body. And that's also found in the Bible as well. And there's many more.
There are. I condensed, I actually had that in my initial lesson here, but I condensed it down because I thought I was getting too long. There are, and we'll look at a few more of these next week. I will include those in next week, but this was just the sampling that I did for this presentation. But yes, you're spot on. There are a wide variety. We just touched on some of these. Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to release you early then if you don't have anything, or if you want to come and talk to me privately. I'll be up here for a little bit. Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Part of this is, again, with advancements in technology, one of the things we started noticing when we started pointing telescopes up to the sky is we started getting a bigger picture. In the 1900s, we started recognizing Edwin Hubble was the one that kind of came up with this model that we would see certain things and they would be shifted. The Doppler effect. Well, you know, with sound, if you hear a train going by you as the train is approaching, the sound gets kind of high-pitched, and then as the train passes by you, all of a sudden it gets very low. That's the Doppler effect, and we see this with light also. As something is moving towards you, light is shifted in the spectrum towards the blue end of the spectrum. As something is moving away from you, it's shifted towards the red end. And so because of that, we can look and we can see which direction things are moving in. And we also came up with, without getting too deep into it, there's a complicated formula that Hubble came up with that corresponded a distance to that redshift. And so by looking at that redshift, we can look at ourselves and we can look at ourselves because, you know, think about this. What are we going to use for a reference? And so that gets hard. Where do you put your stake at? And so as the universe is moving, we can see stars that are recessing away from us, moving away from us, or moving towards us. And based on that, we can calculate motions. Well, we can take that data and we can compile it, and we can get a map and we can see the motion within our solar system, within our local cluster of stars, and then within the Milky Way. To help? Was that okay? Anybody else? Thank you very much for attending. We'll get into a little bit more. We'll go into creation next week. Okay? All right. Thank you, guys.